And in the spirit of moving furniture around, when we're all finished, we need to make this room look like it was before. So if a few people can hang around and help us do that, that would be great. Bill's sister Darielle is in England and she can't be with us today. But her brother Chuck, her brother Chuck, and Bill's brother Chuck is here, and Chuck's going to come up now and give a talk on behalf of the family. What do you think, Charles? Yeah, you like that, right? Yeah.
Okay. I am Bill's brother and friend. And I'm not a performance artist, nor am I a poet. But my wife, Gretchen, my mother, Irene, my son, Kevin, I love you. My daughter and her family, we all miss Bill. And we're so thankful that Anna is such a helpmate for the last, 30 years. I wanted to read what my sister wrote. She was here about 5 weeks ago. She asked when she should come with Bill's illness, and I said sooner is better than later, and I'm so glad I did. So she came about 2 weeks before Bill died, and we took a trip down, spent some time with Anna and Bill, and took them out to lunch to a winery, had a splash or 5 or 6 of some of Oregon's best, and had a great time, and I'm so glad she was able to come. She left back for home in Sheffield, England, and wrote the following. Hi to you all, Bill's friends and relations, neighbors and poets. Here are a few thoughts from Bill's family in England. She has a husband, a son and a daughter, and their children and so forth, all of which Bill's loved by. I'd like to be hearing your musings and recollections and maybe a poetic take on life with Bill as well. I think Bill had a rich and meaningful life, although as his sister I missed a lot of it, especially in childhood when I sometimes turned a blind eye. I did get to know him differently and better in the last 25 years or so. On my regular visits to Portland, we touch base and have some fun together. On the rich and meaningful side, I think of his deep involvement with family, both the Laxos and the Shiveleys, and earlier with our grandmothers in Winlock and Pasadena. Generous with his time and attention, tolerant and helpful in more ways than any one of us knows. I think of Bill's life as having been structured by his projects. Long-term, short-term, big personal ambitions, or finding exactly the right wines for a family reunion. There were the mind-bogglingly muscular projects like lifting the barn roof or erecting a building to protect the trailer out at the ranch, and the cerebral projects, poetry always, and latterly producing the book, screenplays, performances. Bumbershoot Festival had a special place in the annual cycle. Self-improvement projects threaded through as well. I think here of gym workout programs, as well as turning himself into a wine connoisseur. How many of Bill's projects were fundamentally social? He carved his own path in teaching, using special projects to motivate the kids and help them structure their learning in the course of these projects. He made connections between his group of troubled kids and their larger community. Kids developed reading, arithmetic, and shop skills by designing and building birdhouses, library shelves, and even whole greenhouses. And more importantly, developing the self-control needed to survive and succeed as kids and as adults. He worked with special education students, especially the last 15 or 20 years of his teaching career, and it was a very, very challenging part of his career. Personally, I always love that hour or two after dinner when the wine bottles are still open and conversation flows. Ideas expand, words come together, and the brain feels like a well-oiled machine. And together you can sort out the problems in morals and metaphysics and politics and poetry. Bill was always up for that game and would be one of the high points of my annual visits home. Another real conversational delight, one which couldn't be arranged so easily, might happen when Bill, Chuck, Mom, and I sat around the table recollecting and riffing on bits of family history. Through fits of uncontrollable giggles and laughter, there was a kind of wavelength the four of us generated that no one else was on. It was truly exhilarating. Back to Bill's projects, some of them were just fun. See wine above. And this is where we come to canoeing. I'd love to have something like his Newburgh to the Sea adventure, but since that wasn't on, Bill took me camping with a canoe several times in the last 20 years, when I visited Portland without children. All grown up and irresponsible, our first adventure was the most memorable. New boat, he found an easy stretch of rapid water at Milo McIver State Park in Oregon and devised a plan. Park the truck at the put-in, paddle a few miles downstream in the sunshine, then I'd stay by the boat while Bill hitched or hiked back to the truck and come pick us up, me in the boat. Drive home, happy day. This was an excellent plan. The execution yielded a few add-ons. Not very long after launching, we came to the biggest rapid of the whole route and capsized the boat. It was probably me. After all, I hadn't paddled in running water since Honey Rack Camp at age 11. Daryl's about 7 years older than Bill. So she was in her mid-60s when this happened. It was a perfect hot day for a swim. We righted the boat and pulled up on a gravel bank, untied plastic bags of lunch and spare gear, and spread ourselves out in the sun to dry. Lunch was okay. Perfectly edible sandwich meat could be extracted from the mustard-flavored mush, which had been bread. We had apples, chips, candy bars, and the beer was nice and cool. Later, warm and dry and fed, we contemplated the rest of the day. The plan was still a goer, no problem. But what I best remember about that terrific day is Bill saying, "We'd better not tell Mom. Might get in trouble." That's the kind of brother everybody should have. I'll miss him, and we all will. We send our love from England. Derek. That's my sister's short take. All I wanted to add was a few thoughts of my own. I recently read an essay that really hit home. It was in a book, H is for Hawk by Helen McDonald. She was training hawks to hunt, and it's actually quite philosophical. Anyway, here's the passage. There's a time in life when you expect the world to be always full of new things. And then comes a day when you realize that is not how it will be at all. You see that life will become a thing made of holes, absences, losses, things that were there and are no longer. And you realize, too, that you have to grow around and between the gaps, though you can put your hand out to where things were and feel that tense, shining dullness of space where the memories are. That resonated pretty deeply with me and my experiences with the last 5 or 10 years. In 2007, Bill and I conspired to meet on separate vacations, and this relates to the memories of that last. In separate vacations, he was by auto and canoe to, he was heading to western Montana, and I was riding my bike from Seattle to Wyoming. So we met for 3 days in western Montana, and Bill typically was camping, and I kind of typically was staying in a motel. But he would paddle the boat down to the state park, and then I'd jump in, and we took a trip down the Clark's Fork River, which is actually the one that drained Great Lake Missoula, if you remember that story about the floods of eastern Washington. Anyway, we had such special days. The weather was perfect. Bill's a great paddler, a great canoer, and I managed not to capsize the boat. And we saw more wildlife in 2 days than you need to see in a lifetime, I think. We saw moose, we saw eagles tearing apart fish, we saw pelicans fishing, We saw deer swimming across the river. It was just an amazing 2 or 3 days, and one that I'll cherish for the rest of my life. I wanted to read one poem that Bill, that's been on our bulletin board at home since he wrote it in 2005. It's a very short one, but I especially, not being a poet myself, especially appreciate the way Bill could turn a simple phrase into a meaningful thought. It's called, "It Isn't the Sadness." It isn't the dirt, it is the river. It isn't the fire, it is the water. It isn't the wind, it is the wave. It isn't the sadness, it is the tears. Shively, September 2005. As Martha said, Bill is my brother, my friend, and I'm glad to be here with all of you and share this moment, so thank you so much.